This is a Rattle and Hum Sports Podcast for Sunday night, September the 8th, 2013. I'm Bryan Houston. The Cowboys open with a big win over the New York Giants, 36-31. And with us right now to break it all down, Cowboys contributor for Rattle and Hum Sports, Matthew Postins. How you doing, Matthew?
Hey, fine, Bryan. How are you?
I'm good. It was an interesting ball game. I can't say it was the most beautiful thing I've ever watched, but a win is a win is a win. What did you think about it?
Well, I think you certainly saw the good that this defense can do, the 4-3 cover 2 that Monty Kiffin has installed with the 6 turnovers they forced. They were actually able to turn those into some points. Specifically, the defense was actually able to turn them into points more than the offense was, but that's something they can address down the road. The offense was better. They ran the ball a little better. We'll talk about the per carry average and all that. Miles Austin had a good night. Des Bryant did not have a big night, but I think the Giants are paying plenty of attention to him. But overall, if you're the Cowboys, you got a couple of monkeys off your back. A, you finished a game in which you were leading going into the fourth quarter, and B, you beat the Giants at home for the first time since AT&T Stadium opened 5 years ago.
All right, let's go ahead and spend some time talking about that defense. You mentioned the turnover factor. Obviously, that is one of the big goals of the Cowboys. I mean, they only got 16 takeaways all last year. They got 6 tonight. So right there, obviously, immediate results in the Monty Kiffin defense. But it was definitely a bend and bend and bend kind of an offense where you had Eli Manning throw for over 450 yards, or right at 450 yards. You had 3 wide receivers with over 100 yards receiving. Is that just something you're going to have to live with all year long? That means the secondary didn't play very well tonight.
Well, as far as live with it, not necessarily. Monty's defenses are, in a sense, bend but don't break, because it's about not giving up points as opposed to not giving up yards. The turnovers you saw tonight, that's Monty Kiffin football. Yeah, that's what they preach. That's what they teach. Stand the ball carrier up, strip the ball, force fumbles, pick off passes. That's exactly what they want. But, yeah, you're absolutely right about the secondary. They were exploited down the deep middle all night tonight. Victor Cruz got them a couple of times. Ruben Randall got them a couple of times. They were very soft in the middle of the secondary, which in a Monty Kiffin defense, you don't normally see that. Now, you've got a couple of safeties there. Will Allen's got experience in the cover 2. Barry Church doesn't. J.J. Wilcox was in there on a play where the Cowboys got burned deep. He's not very experienced in the cover 2. I think some of that is experience, but I think some of that is certainly they need to shore up the scheme in that regard, because the cover 2 is designed to be strong up the middle, and if you've got weak safety play, that's going to be a concern down the road.
I thought the defensive line played fairly well, but once again, we talk about the secondary getting torched, but they did not get a great pass rush on Eli most of the night.
It wasn't fantastic, but it was enough. They had a couple of well-timed sacks, especially that one in the fourth quarter, where they crashed the middle of the field and Jason Hatcher was able to sack Eli Manning. It was not a consistent pass rush all night. You saw Monty mixing in the blitz a little bit more than he probably would have liked to in that situation. But, at the end of the evening, all you really care about is whether or not they won the game or not. Sean Lee had an exceptional game. I thought Bruce Carter had a very good game. 3 sacks in the game, I'm sorry. Selvey and Hatcher each had 1. Bruce Carter had 1. You can't always measure pressure by sacks, but certainly the pressure was inconsistent tonight.
But you mentioned the guys that had good games, and I agree with you. I thought Selvey, Sean Lee, Bruce Carter, Ware had a nice game tonight. So there was a lot to like. Hatcher had a nice game tonight, I thought. So a lot to like from the defense in spots. Again, the secondary, a bit of a concern. And, Eli, man, when you look at a 450-yard passing night, the other thing that was really that bugged me tonight, and I'm sure it's going to bug most anybody that watched this game, is that first quarter where the Giants turn the ball over 3 times and the Cowboys get 3 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to be something that's going to be talked about a lot this week, because as much as we've talked about the defense and needing to create more turnovers for the Cowboys, And as much as we've talked about the running game getting better, it's also about getting off to better starts to the season, to games, and that part of that is converting turnovers into points, which frankly is a problem the Cowboys have had the past several years. They got 3 opportunities to score points, to score touchdowns off of turnovers to start that football game. A couple of times they had very good field position to do it, and they only turned it into one Dan Bailey field goal. Like I said at the outset, Cowboys got 2 scores off of defense tonight. Their defense actually converted the points for them. I think if you go back and you look at the stat ledger, the defense probably converted more points off of turnovers than the offense. So that's something that's going to have to change as you're looking forward to the next 15 games. The Cowboys are going to have to get better at capitalizing on those turnovers.
I don't have numbers as far as penalties are concerned, but it seemed like every time the Cowboys had the ball, there was at least one drive-killing penalty in the drive.
Certainly the penalties are going to be of a concern, but, it's strange. They only had 5 tonight.
Yeah.
Just 5 penalties for 40 yards, but they were ill-timed, and that's something we've talked about in the past with this team is that, it always seems like they have penalties at the wrong time. Now, I'll say late in this game, I don't think they had a lot of penalties late in this game. I thought,
True.
Based on the way they've played the last couple of years, this fourth quarter was pretty clean for them.
You're right.
I mean, they still only won the game by 5 points, but they didn't commit any damning penalties. They didn't commit any turnovers. They moved the chains a little bit. They came up with some good defensive plays. They played a pretty clean fourth quarter, and when you're in a close game trying to close it out, that's something you've got to imprint on your team. You've got to play clean football, and they did that for the most part in the fourth quarter.
Tony Romo tonight, a couple of things. First of all, 49 pass attempts tonight. Really? I mean, I thought we were going to run the football more.
Yeah, I thought I was too. And I guess we'll see if that balances out over the course of the season. Only 23 rushing attempts, and Romo actually had 2 of those. But Romo throws the ball 49 times, but it was an efficient night. I mean, he completed better than 60% of his passes.
In fact, he completed 73.5%. He was 36 of 49.
Yeah, it's hard to argue when you complete that many passes in a game. I mean, that's a great percentage against a good defense, against a good Giants secondary too. Obviously he didn't put up the gaudy numbers of Eli Manning, but he and Miles Austin had a nice rhythm tonight, and I think part of that had to do with the fact that the Giants were paying so much attention to Dez Bryant on the outside, and for good reason. I mean, Bryan had a huge preseason, and he's going to get his receptions, and he's going to get his touchdowns over the course of the season. But because the Giants were paying so much attention to Dez Bryant, Tony Romo did the smart thing and exploited Miles Austin in those slant routes, exploited Jason Witten over the middle, used DeMarco Murray as a safety valve. I mean, those are your 3 leading receivers right there, and they caught 26 of his 36 receptions, and that happened because he realized early on the Giants were going to try and take Dez Bryant away from him, and Tony Romo did the smart thing and went to the guys that were in one-on-one coverage, Miles, Jason, and DeMarco.
Yeah, and one of the things that was really impressive about Romo is that he did not try to force anything tonight, and the one interception, it was obvious that Terrence Williams broke the route on him and ran the wrong route on the interception.
Yeah, that was very obvious miscommunication. I would chalk that up to the fact that, Terrence Williams missed 2 weeks of the preseason due to that concussion and really hasn't had the opportunity to, create the chemistry that Romo has with other receivers. But, certainly he didn't make a lot of mistakes tonight. And, we've been talking all along about, Tony Romo being more involved in the offense and hoping that would, have an impact on the kinds of decisions that Tony Romo makes during the game. At least for this evening, it seemed to make an impact. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. He went with high percentage plays, and he didn't take a lot of chances. And because the defense played so well, and because the running game was serviceable, he didn't have to take a lot of chances.
The other thing about this ball game that really stands out is the Romo sandwich there close to the end of the first half, where we thought maybe he'd gotten broken in half. And I was really pleased to see him come back, but when they were talking about the wind just being knocked out of him, the way he was moving sure looked like broken ribs.
It kind of looked like a magic trick, didn't it, where you put the guy in the box and you try and saw him in half?
Yes.
He certainly finished the game well. He certainly didn't seem to be in a whole lot of pain. after the game was over when he was interviewed by NBC. But he had the rib issue after the San Francisco game a couple of years ago. Those turned out not to be broken ribs. I think the Cowboys are hoping that at the very least, if he's X-rayed Monday, that there are no broken ribs and they're just bruised. Because if they're bruised, you can play with those. If you're an NFL quarterback, you can find a way to deal with that kind of pain. But he's shown a propensity for being able to play hurt over the years. I don't think anybody questions Tony Romo's toughness, but certainly that's where you look at the offensive line and you look at the way that line played tonight. They didn't give up a sack till the fourth quarter, but they did give up some big hits on Romo. I would not say the offensive line played great. I'd say they played good. I'd say they did enough in protection to keep him upright most of the game. But I don't think they're done necessarily tweaking this offensive line just yet.
No, one of the things that was amazing about it was that Romo was not scrambling around running for his life all night long.
No, he did have a pocket to work with most of the time, which was definitely a marked contrast to some of the games they played last year, where Romo seemed to have to step up or step out repeatedly throughout the game. Obviously, part of that was due to the fact that Jason Pierre-Paul was not himself. I think it was pretty obvious to everyone that he was not 100%. I thought he did a pretty good job, but Tyron Smith handled him pretty easily on that left side, and because of that, I think that took away a lot of what the Giants were able to do as far as a consistent pass rush is concerned. So, Romo certainly had a pocket to work with, and I think he'd rather throw from the pocket, in all honesty. I mean, I think we all look at him as that riverboat gambler, Brett Favre type who likes to run the football, but I think really Tony would like to throw from the pocket and be able to go through his progressions and pick a defense apart.
Well, and one of the touchdown passes, he had all day to stand back there and find a third receiver.
He did, absolutely. And if you're going to give him that much time to find a receiver, more often than not, he's going to find one.
And that was the pass to Jason Witten in the third quarter, I thought, where it seemed like he could stand back there all day long. The only part of the offensive line that was really disturbing, Mackenzie Bernardo has got to go.
Yeah, they referenced that during the broadcast. Chris Collinsworth actually talked about how he felt as if Brian Waters might be the Week 2 starter. I don't think the Cowboys brought Brian Waters in to be a guy, to be a backup. I think they brought him in because they felt like even in year 12 of his career, he was an upgrade over somebody on that offensive line. And when you consider the fact that when you look at those interior guys, Frederick played solid, Leary played solid, even Doug Free and Tyron Smith had solid games. It seemed like most of the interior rush and most of the interior push was coming on that right side where Bernardo is situated. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Bernardo is just a short-term starter. He might play again next week against Kansas City simply because Waters might not be in condition or ready to play. But I think at some point we're going to see Brian Waters as the starting guard in place of Mackenzie Bernardo. And it'll be interesting to see if that makes that side of the offensive line more solid.
The other concern right now is Des Bryant. He rolled an ankle, and that could be a lingering injury. Let's hope that's not too serious.
Yeah, you certainly hope that that's not going to be a serious issue. And I have not seen any kind of an evaluation or any kind of news regarding what the condition of his ankle is at this point. I did not see whether or not he walked off the field under his own power. Certainly, if he did, that would be a good sign. But when you consider that Lance Dunbar rolled his ankle in preseason and he just now got out of the walking boot, the last thing you want to see out of the guy you consider to be your number one wide receiver is an injury that's going to keep him out for multiple weeks.
Okay, we've covered a lot of things. What are some things that we haven't mentioned that stood out to you tonight during the course of watching this ball game?
Well, I think a lot of folks are going to make a big deal out of the imbalance between the run and the pass, and certainly they should. If you look at the way they ran the football tonight, DeMarco Murray ran the football 20 times tonight, and he caught 8 passes, so he actually had 28 touches tonight. That's a pretty big workload for a guy that most of us have written off as injury or prone 2 years into his NFL career. 86 yards rushing. The team rushed about 3.7 yards per carry. You'd like to see that be a little bit better if you're Jason Garrett, but DeMarco Murray under the radar had a nice game tonight. If he can stack 2 or 3 of those games in a row, where he's gaining 80, 90 yards rushing and catching several passes a football game, then that's going to make it really hard for either Philip Tanner or Lance Dunbar or even Joseph Randall to get on the field.
Yeah, and one of the things that I thought about was that there were a number of times where they got nothing on first down and found themselves in second and long, and that had a lot to do with the play call tonight, I thought.
Yeah, certainly, and we saw that last year too. When the Cowboys aren't getting that push on first down and they're not getting yards up the field on the run, then you're more likely to turn to the pass on second down. It'll be interesting to see if this line continues to progress and improve. If that's part of the game improves on first down, if they're able to get more yards running the football on first down, how is that going to impact how Bill Callahan calls the game moving forward?
What other things struck you tonight?
Well, we talked about how the secondary did not have a good game overall, and, frankly, they didn't. One guy who did was Brandon Carr. Of course, he returned the interception for the touchdown late in the game, the interception that kind of put the game on ice, but I thought he did a pretty good job in coverage most of the evening. The issues coverage-wise for the Cowboys were not on the outside. They were on the inside where the safeties are, and that's where the evaluation is going to come this week as the Cowboys, try to figure out what adjustments they need to make on the inside because their front seven played extremely well. Their corners played all right, but their safeties did not play too well tonight.
The one thing when it's all said and done, I guess my takeaway from this thing is this was a ball game they won 36-31, but if they had scored 2 touchdowns off of those 3 turnovers in the first quarter, this game would have been no sweat, I think.
I think so, too. I mean, I made the point on Twitter at halftime that the Cowboys were up, but they really ought to be up by 2 touchdowns. Or they really ought to be up by more points than they are. They cannot continue to have these kinds of games where they get this many turnovers and they don't convert them into points. Now, you think about it, the Cowboys are not going to force 6 turnovers every game. If you're a good NFL team that is able to force turnovers, usually you end up forcing about 2 turnovers a football game. So that gives your offense 2 extra possessions. Every time you get that extra possession off a turnover, that's a precious thing for your offense, and you cannot have those possessions end up with a Dan Bailey field goal. It's got to end with somebody like Jason Witten or DeMarco Murray or Des Bryant in the end zone doing a touchdown dance. That's one tangible way in which this team can make things easier for themselves. I mean, they had a nice lead in the fourth quarter, and they were able to hang on to it. The game of football is a lot easier when you're in control of the football game. And if you're missing out on opportunities to score points off your opponent's mistakes, then you're missing out on an opportunity to further exert your control in the football game.
And then on the other side, looking at the Giants, you just think about how it could be so much worse. You could be the Giants and have their running back situation.
Oh, my goodness. I've got David Wilson on my fantasy team.
That is a fantasy. That's a complete fantasy there.
It was...
You might ought to consider cutting that guy quick.
I've been following the Giants all my life just because obviously they've been in the same division with the Dallas Cowboys, and I've been following the Cowboys all my life. And I'm not sure that I have ever seen the Giants run the football as poorly as they ran the football tonight. I mean, 14 carries, barely 50 yards rushing. Coming into this game, NBC Sports flashed up a really interesting graphic. They showed the leading rushers on the team coming into this season. And the leading rusher was Eli Manning.
Wow. Yeah. You're so used to seeing the Giants with a hammer, somebody that just pounds it down your throat. And David Wilson, for one thing, is not a hammer. Number 2, you can't hang on to the football.
Yeah, and you know what? Number 3, their hammer is hurt. Andre Brown hurt himself in the last preseason game. He's out for at least a month. He's the guy that would be getting those tougher yards. The yards inside the 20 when you're trying to score. David Wilson, Tiki Barber needs to go have a talk with him. Because, just Tiki needs to go talk to him and say, look, listen to Coach Coughlin. He's the one who fixed my fumbling problems. He can fix yours too.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. So, all right. What's coming up this week then?
Well, it's going to be a good week. It's going to be a Victory Monday, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Cowboys, had a very light Monday. We'll listen to Jason Garrett talk about injuries and and other issues, and we'll just get ready for Kansas City next Sunday. I'm looking forward to going to KC. I have not been to Arrowhead yet. I've heard very good things about it, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to see that stadium for the first time.
And a reunited situation with the Cowboys and Andy Reid, one of their old nemesis.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't see the Kansas City game today, and they beat Jacksonville 28-2. And you know, I think White House might be able to beat Jacksonville right now.
Hey, don't be insulting the White House.
I didn't think I was being insulting to White House.
Not.
I was being insulting to Jacksonville.
You are. Yeah, you're absolutely right. No, it's the Jacksonville's terrible, and I think Andy Reid is going to do a good job with Kansas City.
Well, I think you're absolutely right about him being an old Dallas nemesis. It seems like no coach in that division seemed more capable of scheming the Cowboys than Andy Reid. And you know, an Andy Reid coach team is going to be well prepared, and they're going to be very crafty on offense. And you know, you look at what they did today against Jacksonville. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't exciting. You know, Alex Smith only threw for 173 yards. Jamal Charles rushed for 77. Their leading receiver was Dwayne Bowe, but he only caught 4 passes for 30 yards. But when you look at what they did today, I don't see any interceptions. I don't see any lost fumbles. I don't see any turnovers, and that's what you like to see if you're an Andy Reid coached football team. So expect them to do some crafty things on offense and not make a whole lot of mistakes.
Very good. And for all you Romo haters, Cowboys held on to the lead, and Romo did not give it up. Thank you very much.
And that's a big step for this football team because they didn't hold the lead a lot last year. When they held the lead last year, more often than not, they gave it up. To see them get a lead, hang on to it, get some stops on defense, and move the chains a little on offense, and keep that lead, that's a big maturation step for this football team.
No question about it. All right, Matthew Postins, thank you very much for all your insight tonight. You can go to bed now, and we will be talking to you probably in the middle of the week as we get ready to preview the Cowboys against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Absolutely, Brian. Thank you.
You bet. Matthew Postins covering the Cowboys for Rattle & Hum Sports. Cowboys win the opener against the Giants 36-31. This is a Rattle & Hum Sports podcast. I'm Bryan Houston. Thanks very much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.